right, so before we get started, why don't you guys just stand up? I know this shit is, I shouldn't swear. I know this stuff is kind of boring sometimes. So just stand up, like wave your hands in the air like you're at a concert. Be silly, don't worry. Look to the left, look to the right. Give your neighbor a shy smile. Nothing crazy. Great, couple breaths in, couple breaths out, and then sit on back down.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Hello there.
All right, so Daniel, Denis, Jan, and myself. We're going to do something. I was laughing with my wife, Lee, back there. Is that this is like a nerd rebellion. We're going to do something we didn't really talk about doing or didn't tell Helium we were going to do. She's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, we're going to talk about 5G and not about LoRa. So in the world of Helium, that's like a funny thing, but for a non-nerd, that is probably a stupid joke. We were asked to come up to talk about the stepping up the setup idea. And what we thought was, instead of talking about what you should have done over the last year, which is basically of no use to many of you now, is we talk about what we think we're going to do over the next year with 5G. So I think we'll start with you guys, Denis, and we'll talk really briefly about what we did last year and what you guys came up with, if you want to just kind of show off the alpha piece for a second.
Yeah, so we basically were always optimizing and trying to understand how to move deployments faster and faster, and move it from basically 4 to 6 hours per piece to an hour, then to like 10 to 15 minutes or so. And so we came up with basically internally with some gear, which is an weatherproof outdoor conversion kit for a lot of miners out there. So you can take that and convert it into an outdoor piece that already has an antenna built in. So that really helped us to like streamline our deployments. And so, for about a year, we've been kind of testing it all across 50 states, because we also allowed us to turn our hosting program into something where we actually outsource the installation to our hosts as well. So, that was kind of the peak of our deployment practices, is we just boiled everything down into something really, really plug and play,
Love it, love it.
It looks so, I can't say bad words, but it looks really good.
Thanks, man.
It's much better than the $3 keys that I used to get from Home Depot from Portugal. The ones that we have, and I mean, they're still up and running, I think. But
Yeah, surprisingly enough, a lot of the early, like 2019, 2020, kind of like Christmas trees, we built like insane stuff. Is still on today, which is kind of surprising.
It's still up and running, yeah. LoRa's pretty durable, and it's forgiving of us newcomers and of the experienced folks. So what you're looking at over there is kind of the peak of what we could do with the LoRa miner. I think of what the peak is with LoRa miner. Everything fits in one box. Antennas attached to the top. There's a couple of little loops or strap holders in the back. Strap it onto a pole, walk away. You're done in, what do you guys, 10, 15 minutes for a deployment? So
yeah, that's right. I mean, whatever it takes you to put a mass to zip ties and power. So
from like my first hotspot setup was what, 5 days or something.
Right. Yeah, a lot of savings in time, but
I mean, it's nice. The more you deploy, the better you get. You learn through pain as well. Like things happen, and you're like, okay, this I shouldn't be doing next time. I'm gonna fix it. I think as well, like in Lisbon, Portugal, that's where we deployed most of our hotspots. There was 3 people like me, Max, and Alexis. Alexis was called the tile crusher because he's big and then he breaks all the tiles. You need to patch everything that we do. So that adds a little bit of more complexity and more time, but it was like a really fun time that we had last year. Before, of course, we decided to run into like a software company and build Hotspotty. We first learned as much as we could to deploy hotspots, and we wish we had what you guys have right now. It would definitely make our life much easier.
I mean, not to take too much time, but it's like it took us quite a bit of time to get to this, because as you were saying, right, you start buying parts of Home Depot, and then you get yourself, oh, this is like really a lot of loss and really heavy and really expensive. And then it's like, oh, maybe we can do like less loss cable. Yep. But guess what? It's like super heavy. And then, you iterate and, by this time where you make a mold. Yeah, and then you start making molds and tooling and design, and then you get on like CNC and engraving, and end up being like a lot, but actually then you come back to deploy at scale, and it makes a big difference for us. So learn through pain. I think that was
that's been my entire engineering life, I think.
So that's LoRa, but what we've got ahead of us, the people in this group, the people up on the stage, the people watching the stream, is how do we deploy 5G? And let's start off with what the first units look like. So I went downstairs and grabbed this guy. This is the one that they're selling downstairs. So the first thing on 5G is that it comes as two pieces, right? There's the radio piece and the antenna piece, and then there's some guts that get kind of thrown back and forth between the two. So the first thing we all have to kind of wrap our heads around is this stuff is not going to fit in a box that size anymore, right? So that's kind of step one. Bobcat has the other radio setup, so I just want to kind of give you an idea of the size of these things. It's inside this case. It does not come with the case. So when we think about how we are going to set these up and how I'm going to set mine up and you guys are going to set yours up, let's kind of set the stage with what the questions might be and where you guys are coming from. So you two guys in the end of the white shirts have been setting up LTE deployments, which are more or less the same thing as what all of us are going to be setting up here in the US. And then you're going to be running the software side and helping people understand how to map these things out. So I'll kind of start it off with maybe what are you guys thinking about like an optimal 5G setup for someone walking in like me who's basically a knucklehead and trying to figure it out?
I think one of the really important things to understand is it's way more involved. It's a different ball game because something like this you really can install in 10-15 minutes if you really want to and run cable. That thing has two components. So you have the gateway that goes inside. It's an indoor gateway, so that doesn't go outdoors. And then you have a radio that goes outdoors. So it's quite big. And so you're going to run a bunch of PoE, injectors and splitters and stuff like that. So way more involved and directional. So very sensitive to, this is 65 degrees cone, quite sensitive to the azimuth. So when you're pointing it at a particular direction, you better watch out, like which direction, azimuth and tilt. So you're having to deal with that as well. So this bracket doesn't show the tilt aspect of it, but there's also that included as well.
So the azimuth will be like this, and the tilt is
correct.
Like that.
Yeah, right. So a lot more involved. Yeah, exactly. You can do your gym workout there.
On the roof. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I think the involvement is significant, and the cable run job and the scouting of your location, and you need to start, all of a sudden you understand what actually telco deployments mean, and you start understanding, oh, maybe we gotta go scout. Then
let's talk through that then. So it looks like the first thing that you're going to be looking at, the first thing that I'm going to be looking at when I, can you guys hear me okay? Yep. First thing I'm going to be looking at when I get on site is where is this stuff going to be? And you've got those two locations. So is the inside location that's going to be near your router, that's going to be plugging into something like this. And then you're going to run Ethernet cable from this up to the radio. And it depends on what you're doing. Bobcat's a little bit different. But thinking about where that cable is going to go is that it's not just a question anymore of running PoE like this up to the roof and then having an antenna sitting on top of it. Is we're running pretty long distances on Ethernet cable because you can't connect the radio, as far as I know, to Wi-Fi because there's some engineering magic behind that, I'm sure. Right, so now we got to start thinking about how are we going to drill holes in walls. And what I saw doing a couple hundred consults or more last year was that people like, oh, I don't want to drill a hole in the wall. If you don't want to drill a hole in the wall, I'm going to say, maybe you guys can contradict this, but don't do 5G. Right, you're going to have to drill some holes. You're going to have to figure out how to use some tools. You're going to figure out how to kind of level up your installation game. With that said, don't let that scare you off. It's a drill, right? You got this. Just like get the right drill bit, smash that hole through, put some foam glue on it. You're pretty much good to go.
And there's also the indoor stuff, right? Like you can always deploy a kind of 5G or CBRS or LTE network indoor gateway, and that's fine.
Yep.
But you will quickly realize how limited that is. So I guess, yeah, get ready to buy some tools and get sweaty and go up there and do a proper.
And another thing I wanted to point out is that this is 65 degrees or 60 or whatever. So you would probably be interested in putting up a few of those to cover, let's say you have a building with two different cross streets or whatever. So you want to, you're going to point that only one direction. So you need to point it the other direction. And then what if you want to cover the other street? So you're starting to add those up. That adds to your cable run. So all of a sudden you need to run, 100 feet of cable times 4 or something like that. And then really important to stack all of those units indoors somewhere and have a switch, a passive
and when you're saying switch, that's not a light switch. That's like a little box with all your Ethernet cables.
Switch.
Yeah, a network switch as well. So you're probably going to be kind of stacking them because with these guys, that was an issue, right? Like redundant coverage is not needed. With these guys, it's you're trying to look different directions to cover different sides of the streets, you know, and stuff like that. So,
All right, so there's physical stuff, and then there's the software side. So I know I'm shotgunning with you this because I told you about this like 10 minutes before, but what are you guys thinking as far as Hotspotty? How are you going to help people with the 5G deployments?
Yeah, I mean, we started Hotspotty to try to teach the community and everybody to understand the data that is available on the blockchain, but it's just a bunch of numbers and letters. So we always thought about, okay, how can we, in a graphical way, visualize what's happening in the network? So for example, when HIPS 15 and 17 came online, we're like, okay, me and Max were like, okay, let's study how the H3 index works that was developed by Uber. Let's try to implement this on a graphical way. We spent a lot of time, of course, learning about LoRa, but LoRa is also much simpler to understand. And then every time Helium was deploying a new update on how to, like, okay, there's an amount of hexes that's going to be, how many hotspots can be in hexes. We're trying to figure out how to display that so the community can understand and just like build a better network. We're trying to do the same thing with 5G. Like I feel that I'm so stupid when it comes to 5G. There's so much to learn, but like we're talking to a lot of people, a lot of much smarter people than us.
Yep.
And we're trying to figure out, okay, so how can we understand this as much as we can and try to move this and place it in Hotspotty that people can use it for 5G. We're planning the future of Hotspotty to be like same thing as Helium, have like a sub DAO. Every different project, we focus on that. So we try to like learn as much as we can, because we know, for example, 5G is way more complicated than LoRa. LoRa can have a bunch sitting next to each other, of course. By the blockchain, they're going to hurt their rewards, but it's not going to be nothing physical. It's more on the software side. While if you have two CBRS cells next to each other, they're going to interfere, and you're not going to make any money, but it's going to be because of physical properties and not because of the software. So that's things that we need. We're trying to figure out how to help people. And in terms of the frequencies, we have like, okay, here's a good location for you to place a hotspot. But there are some other places that like, here you cannot place a hotspot because you may get a fine from the government, for example. So it's a much more complex project. But come on, we love projects and we love complex stuff to do. So let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, so that brings up, we'll stay on software for a little bit because I think there's another giantly exciting opportunity that is going to land squarely in Daniel's lap, as well as Aiden. I don't know if Aiden, you're in the audience with the Hotspot RF, but we've only got 2 US-based people up on the stage. We got myself and Denis, and then we got 2 non-Americans, a Brazilian and a Spaniard, if I'm getting it right. So, bienvenidos.
Gracias.
But that brings up this really giant opportunity, is that a lot of us in the US may not want to buy a 5G unit. Maybe we don't have the money, maybe we don't want to make that piece, or we're just kind of not sure. Is that what I've seen on Discord, and what we've seen on kind of private chats, is there are a ton of non-US folks who are saying, hey, and I know Keenan is out there somewhere, I will totally buy that radio if you've got a location. And so what we're going to see are companies like yours starting to help people make those connections, and that goes back to that collaboration I talked about earlier, is we're entering this age where you can not only kind of digitally meet people online, and that's pretty cool, but you can kind of digitally run a business online with real people in different parts of the world, and that is just, I don't know, super exciting. It gets me all fired up.
In fact, just a comment on that.
Yeah.
The true example of that is we've run early on programs with hosts that are like half across the world, and they own some equipment, and we have, thanks to you, Daniel, we use like Hotspotty, so we're able to manage it, and then they ship us the hardware, and we know how to do it, and we get the locations, and then kind of like this symbiotic kind of like ecosystem setup, which is really interesting, and like it's clear, of course, that I think that when you push the technical aspects on like 5G or LT stuff, and that is going to get even more specialized, and I think folks will really kind of find value in that.
True decentralization, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And then you're also going to have folks like me who are not super technical. And Bobcat, they sent me one of these guys, and they said, I think it came with a bunch of plugs, and there was no PoE. And I've been doing these LoRa hotspots. I'm like, well, how do I do power over Ethernet? And they very clearly said, you do not do power over Ethernet with this. And I looked at it, I said, well, I can read the numbers. It's 60 watts. I'll just buy a fancy splitter, and I'll do it. And they wrote me this really very polite email saying, we strongly recommend you do not do that, and don't do this, and here's the reason. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And I think what we're finding from that is you have folks who are really willing to make mistakes and to kind of push the boundaries. And I'm 100% sure that Bobcat knew exactly what I could and couldn't do, like they're engineers and I'm not. But all of you are going to get to push those same boundaries and figure out these things and move a lot faster than a company may be able to move on its own. So we may end up frying a couple hotspots on the way. So far, mine hasn't. It appears to be working. But it's super exciting to see what we kind of do on a hardware, that's as close as I'll get to hacking, so I'll call it hacking. But on the hardware side.
I mean, I do want to see, because the 5G are much heavier devices. I want to see videos of you going up the hill with your devices.
Super good point. So that brings up something else that I'm going to ask you guys is how are we going to get internet, or what the technical side will call backhaul? How are we going to get that internet connection to a 5G unit if you can't plug in an Ethernet cable?
You need to plug it into a router and have an Ethernet
The holy
cable.
backhaul.
No, but
The holy backhaul. You need it.
You can have air fiber if you really want to. It's really super involved, but if you can, you're doing a lot of off-grid stuff and installs remotely, so you could probably do like a kind of a multi-hop with
I mean, you can use Wi-Fi DAB as well.
Right, optical. I mean, yeah.
It has
That's
to be
right. That's like a nice
backhaul
little
needs to
setup
be
for
backhaul.
Wi-Fi 6, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, one thing they were talking before as well. I don't know, should I plug about the Wi-Fi as well?
Do it.
Because I mean, I'm from Brazil, live in Portugal. I don't go here like the Mean Girls movie. And CBRS is not available in Europe yet or anywhere else other than the US. And I was thinking okay, Wi-Fi 6 seems such a good thing that's out there already. It's ready to be deployed. It's available. I could be saying a lot of BS right now, but I do think that I don't know if it's also a marketing part, but Wi-Fi 6 solves so many problems. It's like you don't need to worry about interference. It's already available anywhere. You can just plug and play. Of course, to deploy that on the Helium network, still going to have a lot of work to do.
We'll just let those guys handle it.
I mean, yeah, it's easier.
They're smart.
Yeah, they're smart. But I think having a push on the Wi-Fi 6 could be super interesting, because then right away you could have South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, everywhere having this. But like I said, I don't know anything, so.
I mean, it's interesting because just forget about a second just about Wi-Fi 6. Just name it whatever you want. The way Helium is structuring itself, it's going to lend itself to probably push products. We'll call it X, whatever it is, right? Wi-Fi 6, 7, 20, whatever. It's going to allow it to push products faster, and that's going to drive, hopefully, adoption and use, because something we learned from LT deployments is that you actually hook it up on your phone and you're working, or a Wi-Fi 6 spot. I mean, how many Wi-Fis? If you could have a plan in which you just, there's a Helium Wi-Fi spot and you can just jump on it and dump, like 5 gigs of data immediately. I mean, think about the DC burn. That's product use there on the real world crypto. It's working, right? So LoRa is a little tougher. It works great, but I think Helium should always push for everything. Everything you can use, everything you can expand. The best technology wins, and Wi-Fi 6, it's an opportunity. So I think it will be interesting just from the deployment side. We're always very curious to every possibility.
Yep.
But that's definitely one that we're always really open to it.
Dig it. I'm going to ask you guys about the two-man setups you're telling me about, but I want you guys also in the audience to be prepared. I got 10 minutes and we can do questions. I think it's really important that we get interaction, and if you guys have any questions, this is going to be your chance to ask them. So while these guys are going through kind of two-man stuff and how it may not be just this, that's the antenna, you may have something slightly bigger, is start thinking about questions that you guys have about 5G setup. So talk to me a little bit about how this is going to be different kind of antenna-wise. We're not going to be using this size antenna for 5G setups, especially if you're going to go overboard. We're going to start seeing the bigger sector antennas. Like, how big are those things? How heavy are those things? What does it take to put them up?
Yeah, so you would see this is one of the radios that's available, and you're going to have kind of an expanded array of radios available to you. And in fact, you would have something like this. You would have something similar to this, but hooked up to 4 sectors or something like that. So all of a sudden, that's not going on an umbrella stand. So you're actually bringing a 4x4 foot platform or starting to drill holes into surfaces to secure it and stuff like that. So all of a sudden it becomes like a two-man job, and it's really there's a wider variety of these radios, and these sectors can get pretty beefy.
They can they're light, they're really light, but they're big. They're like this and like this. They're pretty, they're considerable.
You can put them in a backpack and hike them.
I know somebody that does that. Yeah, it's great.
So it's just a bigger thing, but it makes it exciting, especially if you like to work with people. Okay, I think that's most of like the initial big, most helpful stuff that we've got. Let's see if any of you guys have any questions and see what we can do to answer those questions. And you have to stand up because I'm looking straight into these headlights and I won't see anyone unless they're right in the front.
By the way, while we find somebody, don't get discouraged. I mean, the equipment, it's totally manageable and you can learn it, especially if you deal with like LoRa stuff. It's like, it's not insane. I mean, maybe for CBRS here, you need you probably will need your CPA license, but you can do it. It's not unobtainable,
I mean, it's just the beginning as well, right? Like,
totally.
right, there's not that many like 5G hotspots out there. So also the Helium community and the Discord channel, I'm sure that as soon as things start popping more and more, the community is going to help each other, and then things are going to be much easier in terms like, if you don't know I don't know a lot. I know that I'm going to go to the Discord and learn a lot with like smarter people than me. So I'm looking forward for seeing this thing actually come out there.
Yeah, we're all going to learn together for sure. If you want to go to the GristleKing Discord, it's discord.gg/7YP96447. All right, we got any questions out there? No one has a question about 5G yet. You got it. What do you got?
So, are the sampling rates
So we can hear you, sorry. Thanks.
Hello. Excellent panel. Good moderator. So are the sampling rates going to be higher, meaning we can get more data points with 5G than with LoRa?
I mean, LoRa is like a very low frequency, and of course you can only send text messages basically, right? Like, which is sensors. The 5G is like much more shorter range, higher bandwidth. So you can stream movies, and so it's totally different. I don't know if that's the question.
Yeah, basically. So let's say you have your sectors up on the roof and you've done all your plumbing and everything, and your software is running. Your software is running, for example. So I want to get my sensor array to be able to have a higher frequency, to basically capture more data.
I mean, sensors, I think you're always going to use LoRa. I mean, of course, you can use, it's the same thing as using 5G or 4G in your phone. That sensor, if it's going to be transmitting in that frequency, is going to use more bandwidth, also more power.
Also more money.
Also more money. So if we're talking about sensors, and you can send like every few seconds, stick with LoRa. If you want to send a picture, then maybe you're going to have to, or a video of a bird that you're trying to.
It'll be a totally different thing, right?
Yeah,
like they're two separate systems. It'll just be.
Yeah, one is a text message, and another is the internet, basically.
It's like a rally car and an F1 car is like totally different,
Okay.
Totally different usage. Yeah.
So in our world with sensor data collection, the sampling rates for LoRa are actually too low for many of the applications. If you've got a firefighter that's down and you're monitoring their heart rate, for example, you're not going to really pull that from the current sensors that we use.
Not on a LoRa sensor, no. And that may be beyond the expertise of this specific panel. We may not have a good answer for you.
Yeah, but what they usually do is like, you can have both, right? Like, because the 5G uses a lot of power and the LoRa is like nothing. If the firefighter falls down, it triggers the 5G. They start sending like a higher throughput.
Yep.
So that's usually how it works. There's some kind of watchdog that triggers the other one to start sending more often.
That makes sense. The only comment on we'll call it the backhaul, the wireless backhaul, is people are actually using the Starlink ones as wireless backhaul because it's actually fairly inexpensive. It's very slow and it's asymmetrical, but it's inexpensive, very long range backhaul.
If you can use Starlink for your, let's say, home, and then also piggyback off of that, that could be cost effective. However, if you're just using, if you're trying to do an off-grid system or something like that, you have to watch your power consumption on the Starlink dish, and you have to look at the costs, right? Because I believe it's $250 or $300 or something like that, or maybe even more per unit, and then the plan is about $150 a month. So you would need to kind of do the math on that one. So yeah.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit then about finding locations for 5G, because that seems pretty important. Is that they're not going to be the same locations for LoRa, right? This is not going to be on top of a mountain 40 kilometers from the nearest thing. Our ideal locations are going to really come from talking to people, because those locations are going to be in underground bars. They're going to be in places where lots of people are looking at their phones and kind of shaking them because they're not getting coverage. When you see that, that's like, okay, that's a 5G location. So as much as I'd love to put these radios up with a massive solar panel and put the whole thing on like a mule and myself and hike it in, that is not going to be a useful deployment. So it's just switching our understanding of what we're actually kind of going for here and then honing in on that. What do you got, sir?
So on that note, what is the ratio between 5G and LoRa? Like, I know it's a tough question to answer. Like how much further can LoRa go than 5G? I know it's a tough question to answer.
Sure, so I think
a lot of factors,
talking
right?
to the guys downstairs, they said that this outdoor unit can go 3 miles. So let's just say like, and I'm a little bit out of my element here, but I'll give you some rough stuff. Say like 3 to, I don't know, 5 miles maybe if you're super lucky on a great day. LoRa on a crappy day with clear line of sight will go 200 kilometers, so it's 160, 100 some odd miles. So just really, really different things as far as range. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. A lot of factors, though, obviously involved. And I'm impressed to hear it even would go that far, the 5G.
Yeah. So we've seen like LoRa go, I think 80 miles from a mountaintop to a paraglider, so through clear air, and that's just to a little sensor. So that's not gateway to gateway. That's sensor, which is a tiny little oyster, to a gateway. That's unusual. You know, most of the LoRa stuff that we're going to see is going to be within, what, 10 kilometers?
We have one to 70 right now, so I've seen it. So
you can see longer stuff, but like what we're going to rely on is going to be much, much shorter. And so that's another thing that we saw come out of all the deployments was people were looking at their spots and be like, look, I did this 170 kilometer shot. And you're like, well, good for you, but you're earning most of your stuff off of everything within 10K. So
still cool though.
It is still cool. So I guess that brings up too, is that it's going to be on us in this room, on us watching the stream, on us on the stage to learn about this stuff and help each other learn about it. So as you guys find stuff out, as you learn stuff, if you're an engineer, if you guys have been deploying stuff like you guys have, we're going to expect to see even more collaboration than we've already seen.
one more quick one, just real quick on 5G with the MM-Wave. Differences between this technology with MM-Wave.
I don't know.
Assuming it's exactly the same.
I don't know. I don't have an answer. You guys?
I won't touch that. I think it's too technical.
Okay. Yeah. Outside our wheelhouse.
Discord.
Yeah. Is there someone in the back that can answer that eventually?
There you go.
Okay, Rippin, go find
Jump
that guy
on
in the white shirt at the end. He'll answer it.
Give him
Anyone
a
else?
chocolate.
Yeah.
A lot of chocolate.
Yeah, millimeter wave is, I'm ex-AT&T, so millimeter wave is basically we used to describe at AT&T as, you have a chocolate chip cookie and you have the chocolate in the chocolate chip cookie. So millimeter wave is the chocolate in the chocolate chip cookie. You cannot have a universal millimeter wave because, in Dallas out here in the Cowboy Stadium, they had millimeter wave. It requires direct line of sight, but within that stadium, you can have, 1,000 people like streaming data, right? And it will like work like a charm. So millimeter wave is a completely different technology. It uses a different frequency spectrum and everything else. It is not CBRS. It is not CBRS. It's completely different.
I guess I was trying to understand the differences for the community, so we can socialize it in the community. Coming from telco and taking telco out, that's going to be a huge question for us.
Yeah, millimeter wave is a very expensive technology to deploy.
I mean, glass is like an enemy even of it. Like you have a pane of glass and it's already like just tough to pass through it. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I love seeing is like people standing up and it's like, oh, there's an engineer who knows exactly what's going on. He stands up and helps each other. I think that's really important in this community is that there is always someone who knows exactly the answer to your question. And your job is not to know the answer yourself, but to find the person who knows that answer and then ideally propagate that answer out as you're trying to do and as you're helping do. So thank you guys. Anything else you guys have?
No, I just want to say that I love Helium and and that we're a community. I think there's of course Nova Labs pushing a lot of the things, but basically without the community, Helium wouldn't be where they are today. And as more as I learn, every time I learn and try to teach something, and then if everybody try to do the same thing, everybody's going to be much smarter. Or
Ripping, love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just crack on, be curious, right? Just play around with the equipment. If you have it, put it on, turn it on. That's always great. And, we will soon, wake up in like a few months and there will be, a bunch of, radio modules out for broadband. And it's going to be really exciting just to, the actual feeling of seeing on your phone the bars from your antenna, it's incredible. That's not the LoRa feeling, even though it's really exciting to see 170 kilometers. The broadband feeling, that's a game changer. So kind of like an open invite. Just go experiment, be curious, because it's really cool.
Yeah, and there's always like a barrier that you feel like you don't want to cross. It's too technical, or whatever. Just get the thing and install it and try it out.
Indoor, outdoor, doesn't matter, whatever. Just put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Reach out, ask us, ask me. If I can't help you, I'll find the person who can. Thank you guys a ton
Thanks
for listening to this. Rock on.